There's so many different themes on the night of Pesach, on the Seder, through the holiday, that it's very, very hard to be able to focus in on just one thing. And one of the things that I find is that in a generation such as ours, where our attention is so hard to be able to hold in one area, that if you give me a lot of things, I'm not going to get anything. And in fact, the only way to actually get something is to pick one thing. I know that sounds like a little bit of a line from a Dr. Seuss book, but in a certain sense, a person really needs to grab on to something, to find something to hold on to. Imagine at the end of Titanic, if they were trying to hold on to two doors, they would drown. You need one door to hold on to be able to survive. Because if it's too many things, your attention gets distracted. And I think everyone needs to find something, and it's not necessarily the same thing that you find every year, but there's something that you need to find, and it has to be something new. For that reason, actually, I go every year before the holiday, I go out, and I go to the bookstore, and I find myself a new Haggadah, and I try using that new Haggadah to be able to interact on a new level, with a new level of understanding. And to me, the price of a Haggadah it's worthwhile. If I get one piece that I like out of the whole Haggadah, it's worth the price of the Haggadah. This Haggadah actually was given to me, so I can't even say that. But it is a beautiful new Haggadah that was put out by my friend Rabbi Shlomo Farhi. It's a Haggadah of Rabbi Biderman called Be'er Haim. It's unbelievable. And I want to just share with you a little bit of a combination of a few different things that I saw there that really kind of affected me in a profound way. The night of the Seder is called, as you've heard already tonight, it's called Seder. And it's called Seder specifically because it is in order. That's the idea, right? It's something that happens in one thing after the next, after the next. You can't do all the things at once because you can only focus on one part at a time. So Seder means order. We go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. Now, what's interesting to me is I started thinking to myself, well, hold on a second. Well, that would stand to reason, that just like you'd have in a court case, there's a closing argument. That closing argument would really sum up all of the different parts that we've just gone through, correct? Now, Magid is long, it's winding. It starts off by telling us about the fact that we spend this night in a different way. Everything about the night is different. Manishtana. We start talking about what happened in Egypt, how we were slaves and then we were let free. We start talking about all different things about how a person's supposed to relate the story and until when a person's supposed to relate the story. But what's interesting to me is as the narrative winds through the whole of Magid, we get to the end of Magid, and I found the word I was looking for. And ironically, I found it without GPT. I found it all by myself. You know what I found? I found one word. The word is lefikach. Anyone know what that means? Therefore. Excellent. If ever there was a word that says, let me take everything from before and sum it up, that's the word lefikach. So imagine the end of your Haggadah, so to speak, the last part of Magid, in big block letters it says, therefore. It would be safe to deduce that whatever's in that paragraph is really the point of everything that came before, correct? Like I could not say to you, I think he's guilty, I think the person is unremorseful, I think he's a murderer, I think he's going to murder again, therefore I think we should let him go free. Right? Whatever's in the therefore has to mirror what was everything that came before it. So it seems to me that hidden in this paragraph is really something that we need to focus on Pesach. And I must share, when I thought of this idea, it shook me because I somehow missed it. And it seems to me, like many truths do, once you know them, it seems so obvious. How did I miss it? And I don't know if you're like me, maybe you missed it, maybe you didn't. But I want to read you this paragraph. Lefichach anachnu, this is how we read it in the Syrian, in the community. I don't know how you read it, probably everyone reads it a different way. But the way we read it is, Lefichach anachnu chayavim lehodot lehalel leshabeach lefa'el leromem leader lekales. Depends on how hungry you are. By the way, the worst readers suddenly become like Superman readers when they get hungry. It's amazing. I think they should do that in schools. Starve the... No, okay, fine. Right? What do we say? What does it say? We therefore have to thank and praise and raise up and exalt and whatever, all these different terminologies of raising Hashem's name up, of being thankful to God, of showing gratitude, of praising, of using all sorts of adjectives to talk about God. Lemi sha'asa la'avotenu velanu, to the one who did for our forefathers, velanu, and for us, et kol hanisim ha'elu, all of these miracles. Hotzianu me'avdut lecherut. He took us out from slavery to freedom. Mishibud, from bondage, legeula, to redemption. Umiyagon, and from agony, l'simcha, to happiness. Ume'evel liyom tov, and from mourning to a holiday. Ume'afilam, from darkness, l'or gadol, to a great light. V'nomar lefanav, hallelujah. And we will say before him, hallelujah. And then we read the Hallel, and then we make a bracha. My friends, in this paragraph, I would like to say, is hiding in plain sight the astonishingly obvious point of the Seder. Therefore, we must thank. So what is this dinner? It is the Jewish Thanksgiving dinner. Now, that sounds really weird, doesn't it? But think about it. That's our Thanksgiving. This is the family gathering around the table. We don't have turkey, okay? We're Jews, we have dry bread, whatever. We're dipping stuff in salt so that we remember tears, because that's how we roll. But this is our Thanksgiving dinner. And let me share why, to me, that is such an important shift in perspective on the night of Pesach. Right when we start, it tells us that the reading of the story of the Haggadah, which fathers and mothers need to pass on to their children, telling each one their kids about what happened and how evil Pharaoh was, and and how disastrous the situation was, and how we were redeemed, etc. So all of that, says the Gemara, says the Haggadah, Yachol Merosh Chodesh. I might have thought that you could start from the beginning of the month of Nisan. Talmud Lomar, therefore the Pasuk tells us, Bayom Hahu. You should say to your son on that day, Bayom Hahu, if it's on that day, Yachol Mibod Yom. Maybe you could say it when the sun is still in the sky, before it's nighttime. Talmud Lomar, Ba'avur Zeh, for the sake of this. Ba'avur Zeh lo amarti. How could you say this? Ela b'sha'a shematzah u'maror munachim lefanecha. Only when the matzah and the maror are in front of you. And that's why, by the way, when it comes to the matzah and the maror, what do? Zeh. Ba'avur zeh. Because of this. So we have here a pasuk, really, that's telling us that on that day you should tell your sons the story of how you left Egypt. But then in the same piece in Haggadah, we're then told that you're not supposed to say it during the day. When do you say it? When the matzah and the maror is in front of you, which is in the night. So why, asks the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, why in the world would you say on the day of, if you really mean on the night of? Oh, babe, so maybe it means the day, because I don't know, it says day. No. Of course it doesn't mean the day. It means ba'avur zeh, in the time when you have the matzah and maror in front of you. So then say balayla hahu. We have that already, by the way. It's a prominent feature in the Megillah. Balayla, right? You get it? So all we need to say is balayla. Why did it say bayom? Answers the Or HaChaim HaKadosh something remarkable. He answers with a pasuk in Tehillim. The pasuk says that the night that the Jewish people left from Egypt, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Laila kayom yair. The night was bright like the day. In fact, by the way, this answers another question. A person is only allowed to do Brit Milah when? During the daytime. And we know that there's one of the laws of Passover, of eating from the Pesach, is that no one in the house should not have a Brit Milah. Right? You're not allowed to have Kol Areh Lo Yochal Bo. So they had to do Brit Milah on that night. Ask the Mefarshim, how could they have done Brit Milah? It was the nighttime. And one of the answers is, Laila kayom ya'ir. The night, it shone like the day. So we have a pasuk in Tehillim telling us that nighttime was also daytime. So therefore, bayom hahu means the nighttime, which is really the daytime. I have a better idea. Just say nighttime, and then we don't have to juggle. You ever hear something like this? An answer to a question in Judaism, and you're like, that's a good answer, but a better answer would be to not have had the problem in the first place. No, you ever have that? Rabbi, I have a great question. Oh, well, the reason is... What's going on? What the Orach Chaim is saying is magnificent. It's not just that you know what, this is a nighttime that could be a daytime. That's not the extent of what we're saying. What we're saying is that it had to be Laila Kayom Ya'ir. What if God would not have made the sun, so to speak, shine on that night? What would have happened? They couldn't have done the Brit Milah. You know what God should have told them? Guys, open your calendars to the day before Passover. Just write in big letters, Brit Milah. What would have happened? Nothing. They would have just done the Brit Milah during the flipping daytime. Why do you have to do a miracle that's not necessary? Why do we have to have a Bayom Ha'u, which is really a nighttime? And you know what we're trying to do? We're really trying to tell you the nighttime, but we said the daytime because the nighttime on that night happened to be the day. Blah, 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 blah. What's the point? The point, my friends, is that this is not an answer we're squeezing in. It is at the heart of what the night of the Seder is supposed to accomplish. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed, but there was a couple words, a specific sequence of words that should have lit up something in your brain, the memory center in your brain. In the Lefikach, I don't know if you noticed it. Tell me again if you notice a sequence of words that you recognize. Hotzianu me'avdut lecherut. He took us out from slavery to freedom, mishibud, and from bondage to geula, to redemption. Umiyagon, from anguish, lesimcha, to joy. Ume'evel, and from mourning, liyom tov, to a holiday. Me'afela li'or gadol, and from darkness to great light. Well, does anyone notice any of those words? Does those sound familiar? A couple of nodding heads here. You didn't know I was going to call on you, did you? You just be like, yeah, I do. Give the credit. Right? Anyone know where that was? Excellent. Nailed it. Megillah. Kayamim asher nachu. The pasuk says in the end of the Megillah, we celebrate the holiday of Purim because on that day God turned Yagon mi Yagon l'simcha ume'evel liyom tov. We're not using it in the Haggadah by mistake. We're trying to jog your memory. We're trying to remind you of a journey that we've just been on with the story of Purim. How in Purim, just a little while ago, we experienced this miraculous salvation where everything was turned on its head. Where we went from one polar opposite to the other polar opposite. Yagon to Simcha. We didn't stop in the way, in the middle. Right? There was no space in the middle for things to kind of go from really bad to mildly bad to bad. You know, like when you go to the doctor's office and they have all the smiley faces. By the way, have you ever, you know, after security check in the airport, when they have you seen those? Where they have the different smiley faces? I just feel like an airport is a bad place to do that. I don't know anyone that's happy in an airport unless they're in duty free trying the whiskeys. Like those, if they had it there, I think they would get a good response. Right after they made you take off your shoes and your belt and your watch and your underwear, like seriously. Now you want me, smiley face. Okay. The only way is if they turn the machine backwards, they fool you, then you say that you're happy. Otherwise, that's just a terrible place to gather data. Now, what are we doing? You know, there's something that happens to people who live traumatic existence. You have a person who lives in a terrible home, an abusive home. And unfortunately, one of the things we've had to learn as a generation is that abuse is not something that's only a physical thing. In fact, sometimes the deepest scars actually don't show at all. They're emotional. They're a lack of acceptance. They're where you're never good enough. And you know what happens after a while? When that person finally meets someone nice, someone who loves them. They're dating. They go out. You know what they say to themselves after they meet someone who likes them for them? Someone who accepts them, someone who shows them love? What do? Somehow, they figure out how to sabotage the relationship. And do you know why? Why do we sabotage? Because some part of me can't believe that what I've learned so repetitively is now just suddenly wrong. Suddenly, people are good. Suddenly, I'm okay. Suddenly, what I'm doing is worthwhile. My level of religiosity, of kindness, of fashion, it's good enough. I'm good enough. It takes time to shift out of that previous kind of beating that your brain is taken and your heart is taken. So it takes a little while until you believe that you're worthy of love, until you believe that you're good enough. Are you with me? Yeah. God already saved us. Can I get an amen? No, God is. That's the one thing, by the way, I think we need to adopt in Judaism from like churches. Could you imagine rabbis giving a speech and the rabbi's like, and then he said, and then everyone was like, amen! I feel like I get behind that, you know? No? All right, fine. We'll leave it as a synagogue. Fine. The answer is we've been to Yagon L'Simcha, but we don't buy it. We don't believe it. We don't think it's sustainable. We don't trust. So comes the night of the Seder, and we go one step further. We're finally in a place, actually, where we believe it to be possible. So the month of Adar is a month of joy, no doubt. It's very happy when you find that person. But redemption only comes later, when you can believe it. The Zohar writes about matzah, that matzah is called two different names. Michla da'asvata and michla de mehemnuta. It's called the bread of belief, but it's also called the bread of healing. And that Zohar is not describing two different breads. It's describing what happens when a person is eating a bread of faith. When you believe, when you trust, then the healing begins. Rabbi Biederman writes that matzah is an acrostic for the words in Tehillim where the pasuk says, Ki mikol tzara hitzilani, for from every disaster, from every painful thing, He has saved me. Ube oivai ra'atayni, and I got to see what happened to the people that were my enemies. Mikol tzara hitzilani. When you eat the matzah and you remember everything we've been through, how this matzah didn't just accompany us out of Egypt and into the desert, but it came with us to Iraq and Iran and to Syria and to Poland and Russia and Germany, and everywhere we went and every exile we've been through, we somehow took on our back this little shred of matzah that walked with us and always spoke about the fact that even if we were in the darkest night, Laila Kayom Yair, God wanted the Jews to remember, because unlike the Jews, God knew that this was not the final exile. And this would happen again, and that we would suffer, both nationally and on a personal level. People would experience incredibly difficult times, hard times. And in those moments, Laila Kayom Yair, He wanted us to remember that our nights could be days. That however dark it was, that it could get light again. And my friends, that is the point of the entire Haggadah. You know why we're saying this whole story? So we could get to a place where we actually feel gratitude. Where we could actually say to Hashem, thank you. Not I don't believe it. Not I'll believe it when I see it. Not I'm not convinced. But it's here. We've landed. Could you imagine that that's what the Seder is supposed to feel like? Thank you. Thanksgiving. You know, the order, someone once asked me, how do you guys choose which rabbi speaks when? Sometimes it's because one of the rabbis has to go give another class. Sometimes it's because the rabbi has another event. I just came right now from a Seudat Hoda'ah, from a Thanksgiving meal. A family had their grandmother who was in a very difficult way. And I just want to share what she said. The doctor said to her, if we do the surgery, you're going to be lying here on the table. Done. Ask doctor after doctor after doctor. And finally they found one that was willing to do the surgery in a new way, an experimental way that seemed to be working, but it was brand new. And they asked her, do you want to do it? And she said, yes. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Yes, are you sure? All everyone is saying no. This one doctor is saying yes. Are you sure? I'm sure. And she said something unbelievable. She says, because I am in the hands of God, not in the hands of any doctor. I'm sure. And I got to see her tonight read Nishmat Kochai and make Birkat Gomel. You know, every time we talk about goodness that God does to us, we use that word. HaGomel l'chayavim tovot shegemalani kol tov. Gomel. Gomel chasadim tovim. What does Gomel mean? In Hebrew, it means God grants us good kindnesses. But the Chachamim explain that the word Gomel also shares its root with the word Gamal. What is Gamal in Hebrew? A camel. What is unique about a camel over and above perhaps any other animal? All the other animals also have legs. They also have a stomach. They also have a head. That hump, so to speak, actually it's a myth. The water is not actually stored in the hump. But the animal, what's unique about camels is the fact that they could store water with them on a journey. They could take water with them. That even though right now they have a full lake to drink from, and you know what, you might be forgiven for just having a little bit and then being, you know what, I'm full, I don't need any more water. And then going into it, the Gamal is capable of drinking much more than he needs right now, so that when he needs water, it's with him the whole time. That's what it means, HaGomel l'chayavim tovot shegemalani kol tov. That God grants us kindnesses, and sometimes he overdoes the kindness. He gives us so much, not for now, but for later. God could take a night and unnecessarily turn it bright. So Laila Kayom Yair, so we'll remember in our darkest night that this too could turn into a bright and beautiful and sunny day. And if you've ever experienced this, where you're on a plane, you get on the plane, it's pouring rain, it's disgusting on the runway, and then the plane pulls up, it's disgusting, still pouring, gray skies, and then there's that one moment when all of a sudden the plane just passes through from the cloud cover into the sky above. You know what's really cool about the sky above? It's never gray. And suddenly you realize that above this little thing that I happen to be going through right here is blue skies. Laila Kayom Yair. How do you feel about your life? How do you feel about your challenges? Are you confident? Are you hopeful? Are you filled with gratitude for all the wonderful things that you do have instead of upset about the things that you don't? If that's how you're living, then this michla, this bread of faith, becomes a healing process. The night of the Seder heals us. It's called Leil Shimurim. We all go and we open the door. And what do we open the door for? To signify that we're not afraid tonight. You know why? Because we've actually taken these ideas and baked them into our consciousness. It is the belief itself, the emunah itself, that gratitude that you are feeling that brings the miracle itself. That's what welcomes in Eliyahu. When you open the door without knowing if Eliyahu is behind it, that's what brings Eliyahu Hanavi. Not just on the night of Pesach, but symbolically, Eliyahu Hanavi, that which comes right before the ultimate Geulah. And I want to share with you one example of this michla de asvata. The pasuk tells us, the pasuk tells us about this bread that it's called lechem oni, a bread of affliction. Everybody here knows that matzah is not so great. It's really tough, hard to eat. You know, really hard to eat, especially for like a Jewish people that is like 90% IBS. Like introduce matzah to the mix, what chance do we have? You know, usually when you're going on vacation with your family, you want to know how many bedrooms there are. Pesach, you need to know how many bathrooms are in this house. Okay. My friends, michla de asvata, this bread of affliction, it's not so easy to eat. And there was a rabbi whose name was Rabbi Tzvi Kinslicher. He was a great rabbi. He lived in Romania. And during his time there, he started developing, right before Passover, an incredibly painful stomach disorder. And he was in so much pain that right before the holiday, he went to the doctor. And the doctor takes one look, they look at his stomach and they say, your problem is so serious. If we don't operate, and even if we do operate, we don't even know if we can save your life. It's such a serious operation. He begs them, he says, please, I know that you have to do this surgery, but I have Pesach, it's tomorrow. Can I go home for the holiday and I'll come right back after the Seders and then you could do the surgery. The doctors confer with each other, they agree, and they make a condition. The only thing you're allowed to eat is milk and this and that. They give him a list of a few things he's allowed to have. Obviously not on that list, matzah. He gets home, it's the night of the Seder, and he can't help himself. He's like, I'm not going to not eat matzah. So he takes his matzah and he soaks it in the milk so it's soft, right? Even though he's not eating meat that night because he's having it with milk, he soaks it in milk so it's soft and he eats the amount of matzah that he has. And even though he's in incredible pain the whole Pesach, he realizes that eating the matzah actually doesn't bring him any more pain. It's the same level. You know when they ask you, what level of pain do you have? Is it between 1 and 10? You ever have that? Between 1 and 10? I always felt, whenever they ask me that, I'm like, 10 is so low. Like, come on. I feel like this is 100, you know? Right? The nurse was so annoyed with me. She was like, okay, so then 10 is 100. It's the same thing, you know? I was like, you're not understanding me. Okay, fine. Yeah? His pain is intense, but it doesn't change. It doesn't get more with the matzah. He eats this matzah, and he goes to shul the next morning. And he stands in front of his kehillah, and he gives them what effectively is a farewell address. He says to them, you know, it's been the greatest honor of my life to be the rabbi of this community. I want to thank you for having me. I want to beg your forgiveness if I did anything wrong. Tomorrow I'm going to be going into this very difficult surgery. I don't know if I'm going to make it. Please, please, please have me in your prayers, etc., etc. And the people are so moved. Everyone's crying. They're all, behind their rabbi. They're with their rabbi to go through this battle. And the holiday ends, and he goes back to the hospital, and they wheel him into the surgery. And the doctor wheels him, comes into the room after they do the tests, and he says to him, he says, I know you told me that you asked me to wait till after the holiday. He says, but I didn't expect, which doctor did you go see after you saw me? He says, I didn't see anybody. He says, it's impossible. He said, why? He says, I'm looking, and we can't, we want to do the surgery, but the problem that we need to operate, we don't see it anymore. What did you do? Who did you go to? What did they give you? And he says, nothing. I can't tell you. There was nothing. I promise. He says, the only thing I did that I didn't listen to you, he says, I'm sorry, is they said I had some of the matzah that I'm supposed to have. I dipped it in the milk. I had it on the night of the Seder. And the doctor, who's a Jewish man, he says to him, he says, Rabbi, he says, our abilities are limited, but his are not. That is michlad asvata. Every year the rabbi would tell this story over. The power of the bread of faith, the healing element of what faith brings to somebody in their darkest times. It could light up everything. Laila kayom ya'ir. So therefore the pasuk tells you, I want you to read it in the nighttime, but I want you to read it in the nighttime as if it's daytime. I want you to see your most difficult challenges as something that God could get rid of in a second. Every person looks at something and thinks to themselves at some stage in their life, this is so impossible, even God can't solve it. Has that ever crossed your mind? There's a disease, there's no cure. Now what? The doctor tells you, take them home, make them as painless as possible. What do? Nothing to do. But every Shabbat we say, Boreh Refuot. We sing, God, He doesn't give healing, He doesn't heal, He creates new medicines, new modalities of healing. My friends, you understand what that means. Whatever it is that's ailing you, whatever is darkening your world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can brighten it up. And the thing that's necessary for you to do is to be able to eat the bread of faithfulness, of emunah, and through that eat the bread of healing, is to open the door for an Eliyahu that you don't see, but to be sure that he is behind it. When a person lives that way, And especially in this time of unbelievable miracles, like our rabbis tell us, B'Nisan nigalu, in the time of Nisan we were redeemed, B'Nisan atidim lihigael, we also will be redeemed in the month of Nisan. That's true on a national level. Please God, what's happening in Israel, we should be zocheh to see a geulah, a redemption, because we know what happens to the Jews when the Jews are fighting with each other. We've seen it too many times. And I pray that God give everybody not only the wisdom, but also the patience to be able to deal brother with brother. May God redeem us in this time. And may the shalom that we are experiencing, even if it's only temporary, be enough to merit for us a laila kayom ya'ir, a brightening of a night into daytime. And we should feel a deep sense on the evening of Passover, not just of duty to fulfill this mitzvah and that mitzvah, to remind ourselves of this makkah and this makkah and this makkah, but to feel and to taste and to understand mikol tzara hitzilani. He has saved us throughout the generations from every suffering, from every tormentor, from every enemy, to the point that I'm sitting here right now. And if he did that all these years, la'avotenu, that he'll also do it lanu for each and every one of us. May Hashem brighten your nights into the brightest of days. Hazaku Baruch.